Great to have all of you here. I'm going to share my screen now and start with the clarification of terms introduction. This is not a course in philosophical speculation, nor is it concerned with precise terminology. It is concerned only with at-one-ment, or the correction of perception. The means of the at-one-ment is forgiveness. The structure of individual consciousness is essentially irrelevant because it is a concept representing the original error or the original sin. To study the error itself does not lead to correction, if you are indeed to succeed in overlooking the error. And it is just this process of overlooking at which the course aims. All terms are potentially controversial, and those who seek controversy will find it. Yet those who seek clarification will find it as well. They must, however, be willing to overlook controversy, recognizing that it is a defense against truth in the form of a delaying maneuver. Theological considerations as such are necessarily controversial, since they depend on belief and can therefore be accepted or rejected. A universal theology is impossible, but a universal experience is not only possible, but necessary. It is this experience toward which the course is directed. Here alone, consistency becomes possible, because here alone, uncertainty ends. This course remains within the ego framework where it is needed. It is not concerned with what is beyond all error, because it is planned only to set the direction towards it. Therefore, it uses words, which are symbolic, and cannot express what lies beyond symbols. It is merely the ego that questions, because it is only the ego that doubts. The course merely gives another answer once a question has been raised. However, this answer does not attempt to resort to inventiveness or ingenuity. These are attributes of the ego. This course is simple. It has one function and one goal. Only in that does it remain wholly consistent, because only that can be consistent. The ego will demand many answers that this course does not give. It does not recognize as questions the mere form of a question to which an answer is impossible. The ego may ask, how did this impossible occur? To what did the impossible happen? And may ask this in many forms. Yet there is no answer, only an experience. Seek only this and do not let theology delay you. You will notice that the emphasis on structural issues in the course is brief and early. Afterwards, and soon, it drops away to make way for the central teaching. Since you have asked for clarification, however, these are some of the terms that are used. So that's our introduction. Start our clarification of terms. Anybody have any controversial questions they'd like to ask? I mean, it goes back to whatever you seek, you find, right? If you want to seek controversy, then controversy you'll seek. If you want to seek answers, then questions.
I see so much evidence of delaying maneuvers in society these days. They just want you to go on about your business and not question anything. But,
and then even seeing the delay is a delay.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they're just
right.
They don't want to deal with it right now.
Yeah, but even us observing the delay is a delay in our own progress.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's such a slippery slope. All right, let's go ahead and keep going. Let's see what this section has to say about mind and spirit. A Course in Miracles, clarification of terms mind and spirit. The term mind is used to represent the activating agent of spirit, supplying its creative energy. When the term is capitalized, it refers to God or Christ, i.e., the mind of God or the mind of Christ. Spirit is the thought of God, which he created like himself. The unified spirit is God's one Son or Christ. In this world, because the mind is split, the sons of God appear to be separate, nor do their minds seem to be joined. In this illusory state, the concept of an individual mind seems to be meaningful. It is therefore described in the Course as if it has two parts, spirit and ego. Spirit is the part that is still in contact with God through the Holy Spirit, who abides in this part, but sees the other part as well. The term soul is not used except in direct biblical quotations because of its highly controversial nature. It would, however, be an equivalent of spirit, with the understanding that being of God, it is eternal and was never born. The other part of the mind is entirely illusory and makes only illusions. Spirit retains the potential for creating, but its will, which is God's, seems to be imprisoned while the mind is not unified. Creation continues unabated because that is the will of God. This will is always unified and therefore has no meaning in this world. It has no opposite and no degrees. The mind can be right or wrong, depending on the voice to which it listens. Right-mindedness listens to the Holy Spirit, forgives the world, and through Christ's vision, sees the real world in its place. This is the final vision, the last perception, the condition in which God takes the final step himself. Here, time and illusions end together. Wrong-mindedness listens to the ego and makes illusions, perceiving sin and justifying anger, and seeing guilt, disease, and death as real. Both this world and the real world are illusions because right-mindedness merely overlooks or forgives what never happened. Therefore, it is not the one-mindedness of the Christ mind, whose will is one with God's. In this world, the only remaining freedom is the freedom of choice, always between two choices or two voices. Will is not involved in perception at any level and has nothing to do with choice. Consciousness is the receptive mechanism, receiving messages from above or below, from the Holy Spirit or the ego. Consciousness has levels and awareness can shift quite dramatically, but it cannot transcend the perceptual realm. At its highest, it becomes aware of the real world and can be trained to do so increasingly. Yet the very fact that it has levels and can be trained demonstrates that it cannot reach knowledge.
Mhm.
Bum, bum, bum. Hello, Cynthia. Hey, Tim. Good to have you guys here. We are in the Manual for Teachers, Clarification of Terms. We just started with the introduction and we just read Mind and Spirit.
Where is that in your books? Because I don't think I have that in my book.
Some books have all of the parts. My book in particular has like all of the parts, the preface,
Okay.
the workbook, the Manual for Teachers, Clarification of Terms,
Okay. I
and
don't
the
have
supplements.
that.
You can also, I think, get them separately or get them in several places online, which I'm reading from A Course in Miracles now online.
Mhm.
There's also, if you wanted to, that you can read along with it by loading it up from, I don't want to open my mouth. I want to say it's acim.org.
That's right.
Yeah, I think so.
That's right. They have an app. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's a freebie too. And it's the whole thing, including Song of Prayer and
Mhm.
Yeah. So we'll be reading those next.
So this says, so what did it say about the soul?
The soul, they only quoted in where it's quoted in biblical terms, but it
Well,
would be
actually, no,
related
it's used more than that. I mean, it says that there. I know what that means, though. But what does the soul mean in ACIM, though?
Let me get my glossary.
Right.
Speaking of the glossary of terms that we were talking about earlier.
Got it.
I had one
Okay.
too, Carl, and I thought I gave mine to you, but you said you think you gave yours to
Oh,
somebody. Oh, Terry
No,
thought,
I have it somewhere. I just don't know where it is.
oh,
I know it's there. I just,
don't
where is the question? You know my studio.
Yeah,
Soul
my
is
artwork
not
is.
in the glossary of terms.
It's not even there.
Yeah, it's
Is that,
not in there,
is
you're
that
right.
Ken's the Foundation for Inner Peace? Is that
Hmm.
Ken's glossary?
This is the Foundation for A Course in Miracles. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Same thing.
so anyway, the soul is used in like chapter 12, and it seems to indicate that it's the soul thing is something that is akin to spirit. But
That's what it says.
yes, it's
Yeah.
said in this section we just read, actually. Yeah, right.
Right.
But it says it doesn't use it very well. It actually uses it twice. I think in chapter 5 also uses it.
But they don't use
I
it
looked
often.
I looked at it once, and it's very sort of mysterious, like how the Course in Miracles is referring to the soul. But anyway, you see here that consciousness was more or less reduced to something. In Advaita and other traditions where they speak about consciousness, they speak about consciousness more or less as if it's a synonym for awareness.
Enlightenment, you mean?
Well, not enlightenment, but enlightenment is the consciousness aspect of awareness.
Yeah, because this is saying that consciousness cannot bring you to knowledge because it only exists within the realm of the ego,
lib stuff.
right?
I'm just kind of surprised that it didn't segue right into explaining what true knowledge is, but I think that's in like.
Yeah, I think it's coming up.
It is coming up because there's clearly a difference in that, again, in that meaning of the word knowledge. It has nothing to do with perception or what you think you know. Knowledge is like just that sense of
Knowing.
what is it, isness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
pure knowing, intuition, if you will, but a pure resonance of knowing beyond the thinking.
Mary,
Yeah,
by the way, I didn't
good.
say it earlier.
Right. Any other thoughts, or should we go to the next section, which is the ego?
When we were just talking about soul, isn't it that in the original manuscript, wasn't that word used quite often? And then when they redid it into the books that we all use now, that they eliminated or,
They
used
reclassified
less
it.
frequency. Yeah.
I
don't know, but it was
in
in the my phone, yeah. It was in the UR text for sure. I don't know about is it UR text that's the original text, or isn't that some version of the course from somebody else?
I'm not familiar with other versions.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone back to the UR text a few times. It's online also, but I still never really been satisfied about how exactly that ACIM is referring to that word soul, though.
And I think here they're saying it's equated with spirit.
Yeah, but with an individual spirit is how I would get it. In other words, if it's associated with spirit, but it's associated with your spirit.
I think that's why they put a lowercase s. Does that make sense?
Maybe.
maybe.
I just wondered if anybody else had looked into it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, shall we continue?
Okay.
All right. Carry on. The ego, the miracle. Illusions will not last. Their death is sure, and this alone is certain in their world. It is the ego's world because of this. What is the ego? But a dream of what you really are. A thought you are apart from your creator, and a wish to be what he created not. It is a thing of madness, not reality at all. A name for namelessness is all it is. A symbol of impossibility, a choice for options that do not exist. We name it, but to help us understand that it is nothing but an ancient thought, that what is made has immortality. But what could come of this except a dream, which, like all dreams, can only end in death? What is the ego? Nothingness, but in a form that seems like something. In a world of form, the ego cannot be denied, for it alone seems real. Yet could God's Son, as he created him, abide in form or in a world of form? Who asks you to define the ego and explain how it arose? Can be but he who thinks it real and seeks by definition to ensure that its elusive nature is concealed behind the words that seem to make it so. There is no definition for a lie that serves to make it true, nor can there be a truth that lies conceal effectively. The ego's unreality is not denied by words, nor is its meaning clear because its nature seems to have a form. Who can define the undefinable? And yet there is an answer even here. We cannot really make a definition for what the ego is, but we can say what it is not. And this is shown to us with perfect clarity. It is from this that we deduce all that the ego is. Look at its opposite, and you can see the only answer that is meaningful. The ego's opposite in every way, in origin, effect, and consequence, we call a miracle. And here we find all that is not the ego in this world. Here is the ego's opposite. And here alone, we look on what the ego was. For here we see all that it seemed to do, and cause and its effects must still be one. Where there was darkness, now we see the light. What is the ego? What the darkness was. Where is the ego? Where the darkness was. What is it now, and where can it be found? Nothing and nowhere. Now the light has come. Its opposite has gone without a trace. Where evil was, there now is holiness. What is the ego? What the evil was. Where is the ego? In an evil dream that but seemed real while you were dreaming it. Where there was crucifixion stands God's Son. What is the ego? Who has need to ask? Where is the ego? Who has need to seek for an illusion now that dreams are gone? What is a miracle? A dream as well. But look at all the aspects of this dream, and you will never question any more. Look at the kindly world you see extend before you as you walk in gentleness. Look at the helpers all along the way you travel, happy in certainty of heaven and the surety of peace. And look an instant too on what you left behind at last and finally passed by. This was the ego. All the cruel hate, the need for vengeance, and the cries of pain the fear of dying and the urge to kill, the brotherless illusion, and the self that seemed alone in all the universe. This terrible mistake about yourself, the miracle corrects as gently as a loving mother sings her child to rest. Is not a song like this what you would hear? Would it not answer all you thought to ask and even make the question meaningless? Your questions have no answer, being made to still God's voice, which asks of everyone one question only. Are you ready yet to help me save the world? Ask this instead of what the ego is, and you will see a sudden brightness cover up the world the ego made. No miracle is now withheld from anyone. The world is saved from what you thought it was, and what it is wholly uncondemned and wholly pure. The miracle forgives. The ego damns. Neither need be defined except by this. Yet, could a definition be more sure or more in line with what salvation is? Problem and answer lie together here, and having met at last, the choice is clear. Who chooses hell when it is recognized? And who would not go on a little while when it is given him to understand the way is short and heaven is his goal? Oh my gosh, I love that. You know, goes back to, I don't ever remember reading this, and I've read it so many times.
I know. Yeah.
Right? It's so good. What a great question, right? Are you ready yet to help me save the world? That's it. That's the only question. Don't ask what the ego is. Don't ask where the ego is. Don't ask anything about the ego, right? Just
Yeah.
ask, are you ready yet to help me save
Yeah.
the world?
Or, it comes down to a question, are you willing to let go just for an instant,
Right.
a holy instant, whatever you want to call that.
Right. We get
And,
so caught up in
yeah.
the minute details of
Right.
this is wrong and this is right and this is what the ego is and this isn't what the ego is. Doesn't matter.
That was a huge aha moment for me when I was first learning this, that any question pertaining to the ego is ego-based in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, well, I'm trying to understand this, but it's not your typical understanding kind of thing. And so that was the first, wow. If you ask about it, it's your ego talking anyway.
It's just a delay.
Alicia, you are reminding me though of the way a really good counselor would work is he would meet you in that place of craziness, let's call it, and then very carefully lead you out. Very similar to what the Holy Spirit does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Going through a book on Thursdays. It's called ACOA, Trauma Syndrome. And it's by a woman who spent about 50 years working on how to do just exactly what you were just saying, how to look into trauma and then look past trauma.
Yeah.
And see the awakening of the face of healing. Very interesting book.
Say it again, Eric. It's ACOA.
ACOA, Trauma Syndrome, the impact of childhood pain on adult relationships. So it's from connection with the adult children of alcoholics.
Ah.
It talks about both alcoholic adult child and the child of adult alcoholism and the aspects of what goes on in between both. So how do you become so dysfunctional, in other words, from childhood trauma?
Yeah.
Reading it, I realized that pretty much everybody has childhood trauma, not just alcoholics. My parents weren't alcoholics. I was an alcoholic. My parents were not alcoholics. I became an alcoholic because of the dysfunction in my family. My father was from an alcoholic family. My mother was not from an alcoholic family, but she was from a family that was very patriarchal. Anyway, I saw the relevance of like, why don't we get a good answer when we ask about the ego, for example?
Mhm.
Where do we start from? We start from this trauma, that's why. So if we're going to start from trauma, then we have to be able to look at trauma from this peaceful place within ourselves. Do we really need to look at what the ego is done in terms of the use of our mind? No, really what we need to do is find some way to align the mind with what God put in our hearts, which never can die.
Yeah.
There's no separation of the mind from the truth of the heart. But the mind that's used essentially by the ego then is the mind that is unaware of the heart. So this takes us back to our childhood, where at the very early ages, we had a sense of our innocence, which was lost though in the trauma of growing up in a family. In most families, I would say in almost all families, from the way I'm reading it anyways, whether they were alcoholic or not alcoholic.
I would agree. It's in these groups that we find the space to be open and clear and have that trust, I guess is the word, to really share from the heart and not fear retribution. Oh, Tim, how
It's
can
really
you
not
be-
that, it's not that uncommon. It's not just in the groups. I've seen Marianne Williamson 5 times in the last month and a half, and she has incorporated a lot of this into her speeches. Especially, I mean, when we read it, I was like going, where have I heard that before? Are you ready to? Are you ready yet to help me save the world? She incorporates that into her speeches every time I've seen her. Now, are you ready yet? Is anybody ready yet to do this?
She also has an arrogance with people that she knows what's wrong with them when she speaks to them sometimes. So I've seen her talk with an individual, and with the individual telling the individual what's wrong with them. So by the way she does it, however, she creates a turbulence within this person that she's speaking to. And when she's speaking to them, they're finding their need to resist what she's saying to them.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't either. I never got that vibe from her ever.
Hmm.
I don't,
Well, she does that a lot of times when she's speaking to an individual. When
yeah, that's a
crowd,
perception.
she goes
Yeah.
out into the audience and she speaks to the individuals in the audience. And when she gets resistance from people, she does that to them. She tries to minimize what they're saying and summarize it in her own way. And
Are we talking about the same Mary?
Marianne,
We're
That's
down
not
a
that's not my
sidebar.
experience, and I've
Yeah,
seen her
either.
dozens of times.
that's fine. I said it a different way.
And she answered my questions, and it's always been very. There's no demeaning nature in her at all.
I'm not making any issues with her. I'm saying she seems to know what is wrong with a person. And if she tells you what's wrong with you, how are you going to accept that she's understanding you? What you're going to do instead is you're going to find yourself in frustration with what she just said to you, because she's calling you an idiot in your mind, not in her mind. In your mind, she's calling you an idiot.
So
Is it-
then that person's still clearly an ego. The fact that she can see clearly is one of the gifts or one of the natural things that happen when you're in spirit, because when you're not attached or governed by any of those things, you can very easily see what things are tugging at the person in front of you.
That's right.
If by nothing else,
I think
but
that's what she's doing.
um,
She's saying to the person, though, she's summarizing what's going on with the person, though, and they're not, even though they're waking up and they're bringing up these issues because they are waking up. I'm saying she is making an issue about it by her summarization of what they do, which I do too, by the way. So don't, I'm not saying this. It's like unusual or just it's wrong or something like that. I'm saying it's in the realm of we're trying to communicate with each other. I can't reach you at the level at which you're at because I'm talking to a crowd or I'm talking to a group or I'm talking to, with another person or whatever, and they don't see what you're talking about because they're waking up to past that point of seeing that they're still traumatized.
And any word
Because the
will
trauma
be
is-
interpreted by the receiving ear. So again, if that's not been our
Mm.
experience and that's what your experience is, it doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just,
Well, you do exactly the same thing that people do in the crowd. You still, what they say, within your trauma also, and you try to understand it from your traumatic experience of who you are being so lonely. And then you find yourself very frustrated with what.
are you
Back
talking,
to-
Eric? Okay, we
Okay,
need
so
to get,
let's-
we need to move on because you're way.
Okay,
way
so I
off
think
base.
that might be, I think it might.
Doing
it
what
might be
Marianne does, and you
best
like it.
when
You
we're
don't like it.
talking, let's refer to our own experiences as my experience is this, and let's try to limit, telling other people what their experience is.
Yeah, I
And-
agree.
And that
Yeah.
way it'll
Yeah,
it'll
that's what I'm
bring the
saying.
focus back on
Now you
our own
understand what I'm talking about.
experience
There you go.
and our own journey. So I know I've brought this up in the past before. I think it's always good when we share information to say, I am, or my experience is, instead of using the word you, because it can be misinterpreted.
Good.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's continue with forgiveness, which is seems to be a perfect segue here. All right. Forgiveness, the face of Christ. Forgiveness is for God and toward God, but not of him. It is impossible to think of anything he created that could need forgiveness. Forgiveness, then, is an illusion. But because of its purpose, which is the Holy Spirit's, it has one difference. Unlike all other illusions, it leads away from error and not towards it. Forgiveness might be called a kind of happy fiction, a way in which the unknowing can bridge the gap between their perception and the truth. They cannot go directly from perception to knowledge because they do not think it is their will to do so. This makes God appear to be an enemy instead of what he really is. And it is just this insane perception that makes them unwilling merely to rise up and to return to him in peace. And so they need an illusion of help because they are helpless, a thought of peace because they are in conflict. God knows what his son needs before he asks. He is not at all concerned with form, but having given the content, it is his will that it be understood, and that suffices. The form adapts itself to need. The content is unchanging, as eternal as its creator. The face of Christ has to be seen before the memory of God can return. The reason is obvious. Seeing the face of Christ involves perception. No one can look on knowledge, but the face of Christ is the great symbol of forgiveness. It is salvation. It is the symbol of the real world. Whoever looks on this no longer sees the world. He is as near to heaven as is possible outside the gate. Yet from this gate, it is no more than just a step inside. It is the final step. And this we leave to God. Forgiveness is a symbol, too, but as the symbol of his will alone, it cannot be divided. And so the unity that it reflects becomes his will. It is the only thing still in the world in part, and yet the bridge to heaven. God's will is all there is. We can but go from nothingness to everything, from hell to heaven. Is this a journey? No, not in truth, for truth goes nowhere. But illusions shift from place to place, from time to time. The final step is also but a shift. As a perception, it is part unreal. And yet this part will vanish. What remains is peace eternal and the will of God. There are no wishes now, for wishes change. Even the wished for can become unwelcome. That must be so because the ego cannot be at peace. But will is constant as the gift of God. And what he gives is always like himself. This is the purpose of the face of Christ. It is the gift of God to save his son. But look on this, and you have been forgiven. How lovely does the world become in just that single instant when you see the truth about yourself reflected there. Now you are sinless, and behold your sinlessness. Now you are holy, and perceive it so. And now the mind returns to its creator, the joining of the Father and the Son, the unity of unities that stands behind all joining, but beyond them all. God is not seen, but only understood. His Son is not attacked, but recognized. That's always a good reminder, right?
That was profound, yeah.
To look
Way
on the
back in
face of Christ.
2017, I wrote a little comment about that, and I'm not going to read it, but it started out with, I have known this constancy, a love uniting me with all creation. It is an indelible part of my mind. The only true reality is this constant love. And it goes on, but it's something that came through Spirit, as from time to time I do get really clear. And I encourage everyone to, when that happens, to write it down, keep some paper around, and let that come through you. It's just another way. And you could speak it, I guess, whatever. But yeah, practice that. That's just another way of connecting, of giving up. Nothing's going to hurt you. I assure you. No evil spirit's going to come out and start talking in some dark tongue.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that this morning too, because even just little things, I feel like when the ego gets my attention, it just pulls, right? And I just get drawn to it. And I have to say, wait a minute, what am I doing to align myself with God, the Holy Spirit, the right-mindedness, right? And it goes back to practice. And so I went to start doing my, I love the Chopra meditations that Chopra did with Oprah Winfrey. They're just so empowering. And I have all of them. And I find when I listen to them on a daily basis, my mind is more aligned with truth, and I can circumvent the attraction of the ego, right? Because there's like a certain attraction for myself when the ego starts, oh, look at here, look at this shiny thing. Oh, look at this. This is wrong. Isn't this wrong? Don't you feel justified that this is wrong? Oh, this is right. And I have to remind myself, the only thing that's right is my alignment with truth. And I need to just get back to my practice.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, it says forgiveness is a symbol too. I guess that confused me. It's a symbol of what? And then I go back up to the paragraph before that where it says the face of Christ has to be seen before the memory of God can return. The reason is obvious. Seeing the face of Christ involves perception. When they speak of the face of Christ, like, what am I missing? They're not actually talking about the face of Jesus, are they?
Right. So Jesus was a man just like we are men and women, right?
Mhm.
So Jesus embodied the Christ mind, which was the one mind of God, right? So when he says the face of Christ, it doesn't mean the face of Jesus. It means the face of God
Of that oneness.
in your brother.
And when it says it has to be seen, that's more of a feeling rather than a seeing, isn't
Well,
it?
well,
Like,
yes and no, because when I look at you, do I see Alicia, the body, the ego, or do I see Alicia, the Christ, the one mind of God?
okay,
Right?
gotcha.
Am I identifying you with your body, or am I identifying you with the one
With
mind
spirit.
of Christ, of God, right?
Yeah, but that only can be seen with the eyes after you have seen intuitively or recognized that is the truth. And then your eyes see your eyes perceive what you believe.
Right,
Okay, that makes
Mhm.
sense.
right.
Not
And,
trying
and
to
more,
convince
and Mary, more than what you believe at that point, it's what you know. It's what you're constantly experiencing, that constant connection with spirit, whatever you want to call that. So that's what defines us from that instant on, and we can carry that. The very powerful could carry that the rest of their lives, but most of us are continuing this little shift of buying into the ego's stuff, the preferences, let's call them.
So then can you expand a little bit about the first line in paragraph 5? So forgiveness is a symbol too.
Right. Everything's a symbol until you become at one with God.
Okay,
And
It's-
when you reach at one-ment or atonement, there's no need for forgiveness because you're
There's
already
nothing
with, there's nothing to
Yeah,
forgive.
you're already there.
yeah,
not to be a nitpicker, but the face of Christ, if the face is actually God and it's the higher being, shouldn't that be capitalized?
It's a good question.
Probably.
Face be capitalized because it's small. So I looked at it as being a
Yeah.
actual face because it's small, because it's not capitalized.
Well, let me read it because even in the glossary, it's not capitalized. So face is not capitalized, Christ is capitalized. And this is what it says the face of Christ is. It's a symbol of forgiveness. So being a symbol, it can't be God, right? Because it's still a symbol. It's a symbol of forgiveness, the face of true innocence seen in another when we look through Christ's vision, free from our projections of guilt. Thus, it is the extension to others of the guiltlessness we see in ourselves, independent of what our physical eyes may see. Not to be confused with the face of Jesus, nor with anything external, right? So the face of Christ is seeing our sinlessness in others as a symbol of their sinlessness. So when you can truly look on another and not see any guilt, because you don't have any guilt in yourself to see anymore. You see yourself as completely whole, healed, completely loved, and you see that in your brother.
Yeah, but this is referring to the face of Christ. This is referring to our perception of Christ.
It's of Christ, but not Jesus.
No, I mean, I didn't say Jesus.
Right. So it's the symbol of forgiveness, the face of true innocence seen in another when we look through Christ's vision.
Okay.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because Christ itself has no face. It's the all. It's
Right.
that higher consciousness.
If you
Right.
see
We can
Christ's vision, then everything is there.
words, symbols to discuss it.
Right.
Hmm.
Quite right. And getting back to what Pim said earlier about knowing, the next section is true perception and knowledge. Are we ready to continue with one more section?
Sure.
All right.
Muting.
Okay, true perception, knowledge. The world you see is an illusion of a world. God did not create it. For what he creates must be eternal as himself. Yet there is nothing in the world you see that will endure forever. Some things will last in time a little while longer than others, but the time will come when all things visible will have an end. The body's eyes are therefore not the means by which the real world can be seen, for the illusions that they look upon must lead to more illusions of reality. And so they do. For everything they see not only will not last, but lends itself to thoughts of sin and guilt, while everything that God created is forever without sin, and therefore is forever without guilt. Knowledge is not the remedy for false perception, since being another level, they can never meet. The one correction possible for false perception must be true perception. It will not endure, but for the time it lasts, it comes to heal. For true perception is a remedy with many names: forgiveness, salvation, at-one-ment, true perception, all are one. They are the one beginning, with the end to lead to oneness far beyond themselves. True perception is the means by which the world is saved from sin, for sin does not exist. And it is this that true perception sees. The world stands like a block before Christ's face, but true perception looks on it as nothing more than just a fragile veil, so easily dispelled that it can last no longer than an instant. It is seen at last for only what it is. And now it cannot fail to disappear, for now there is an empty place made clean and ready. Where destruction was perceived, the face of Christ appears, and in that instant is the world forgot, with time forever ended, as the world spins into nothingness from where it came. A world forgiven cannot last. It was the home of bodies, but forgiveness looks past bodies. This is its holiness. This is how it heals. The world of bodies is the world of sin, for only if there were a body is sin possible. From sin comes guilt, as surely as forgiveness takes all guilt away. And once all guilt is gone, what more remains to keep a separated world in place? For place has gone as well, along with time. Only the body makes the world seem real. For being separate, it could not remain where separation is impossible. Forgiveness proves it is impossible, because it sees it not. And what you then will overlook will not be understandable to you, just as its presence once had been your certainty. This is the shift that true perception brings. What was projected out is seen within, and there forgiveness lets it disappear. For there the altar to the Son is set, and there his Father is remembered. Here are all illusions brought to truth and laid upon the altar. What is seen outside must lie beyond forgiveness, for it seems to be forever sinful. Where is hope while sin is seen as outside? What remedy can guilt expect? But seen within your mind, guilt and forgiveness for an instant lie together, side by side, upon one altar. There at last are sickness and its single remedy joined in one healing brightness. God has come to claim his own. Forgiveness is complete. And now God's knowledge, changeless, certain, pure, and wholly understandable, enters its kingdom. Gone is perception, false and true alike. Gone is forgiveness, for its task is done. And gone are bodies, in the blazing light upon the altar to the Son of God. God knows it is his own, as it is his. And here they join. For here, the face of Christ has shone away time's final instant. And now is the last perception of the world without a purpose and without a cause. For where God's memory has come at last, there is no journey, no belief in sin, no walls, no bodies, and the grim appeal of guilt and death is there snuffed out forever. Oh, my brothers, if you only knew the peace that will envelop you and hold you safe and pure and lovely in the mind of God, you could but rush to meet him where his altar is, hallowed by your name and his, for they are joined here in this holy place. Here he leans down to lift you up to him, out of illusions into holiness, out of the world into eternity, out of all fear and given back to love. Well,
Boy. Well,
There
the
it
old
is.
expression will hush my mouth. That
And
that just
so it
popped in, a little humor there, but yeah, this is amazing how he can say this over and over and over and over again, and not twice the same, but all pointing to the same place.
right, right. Just trying to lead us out of the world of illusions.
I'm going to put a plug in for the workbook. I just got an app from ACIM that I'm having some little problems with, but by keeping it in front of me, and it's, right now I'm in a review, it's on the half hour. I do, one lesson, and at the bottom of the hour, another. And I'm doing it more and more, and it's, this is not me, okay. What it does is it's loosening the perception that I have on the world. It's beginning ever more so, but it's not anything that's uncertain, where I can shift, and sometimes just in an instant, from if I'm willing to let go of an opinion, and I find all opinions are just bindings that I've put on my spirit. There's nothing in the world that I really truly want. I mean, I can honestly say that before you right now. I had I'll just share it briefly. I had an experience last week where my lips started swelling. I woke up, my whole mouth was swelling. I went to one of these little patients first places and gave me some answers. He says, look, if it goes any lower, I want you to go to the emergency room. Well, it did. I lost my voice. We took off, and they were doing some stuff, and had no idea what this body was doing. What it was supposedly in response to some kind of an infection or something that I had never eaten or whatever before, this body. But we could not get to the bottom of it. So I ended up with an EpiPen that, yesterday we went to the beach and I left it here. That's how much I'm putting on that. But I guess where I'm going with this is, these bodies, we don't know. Since COVID, I was just talking with a friend who he nearly died as a reaction to the COVID shot a couple of years ago. Very, very dear friend. We haven't spoken in a while. So, delay, he says somewhere in this book, he says, delay and time is tragic. And in spirit, there is no time. But, it's like, why can't we just go a little more full bore towards the lessons? Is it really gonna, I'm only talking about a minute sometimes to review a lesson and then go on, but try to keep that alive. And if you've got that thing on your phone, I mean, you can pull it out and go, oh, yeah, I am spirit. How long did it take? But it's like taking I get the illustration, the example of, you're out in the sun and it's like fading you away. It's bleaching you. Well, this is taking it and it's like a little Easter egg. You're putting it back in the dye. Then you can bring it out in the sun and it's gonna last a little longer before it begins to fade. And it's gonna get finally to where it completely takes over. There's nothing that will stand before the face of Christ, the real truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And it's
anyway,
it's our ego that's like, oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do the work.
I want to do it. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I don't want to do it. I'd rather go
gotta
to
wait
this
till
other
tomorrow.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. But it really is, just making it a practice.
really
Making
is.
the decision, the conscious choice to make it a practice. Because everything is choice, right? What are we choosing next?
Yeah, 42 years, man. I've been delaying a long time. That's how long I've been in this course. I'll show you something.
Yeah.
This is crazy. This is what I did back when I first came into the course. I took it before. Can you see that? Well, wait, now you can.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, this is more than half the workbook that I condensed so I could put these little guys in my shirt pocket each day.
Huh.
And then I'd forget they were there. That's going back to
Yeah.
early 80s, very
Yeah.
early 80s.
Yeah.
So, now they have it where we have apps on the phones. You have no excuse. I will come and get you.
Yeah, I have my first book too. I've been doing it for 31 years. And I can't even see the writing on my first book. It's all been worn away. The binding's coming apart. Pages are
Wow.
falling out.
There you
I've
go.
had so many books, but yeah, it's a practice, right? It's just a practice. And
Somewhere in the book, it says that it's something like this, and I wish I had it where I could look at it directly, but it says being present, I believe, is something like that. Being present in spirit is not difficult. It's just that you don't believe you're worth it. It's something very close to that. You make a decision that I'm just this ego. I got all these things to do. Oh my God, I'll never get all this stuff done. Guess
Yeah.
what? You won't.
I think too, it goes back to that very first powerful quote of Marianne Williamson. Getting back to that, is our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure, and it's that power that frightens us, because we only associate power with fear instead of power with glory and love, right?
Yeah, because it's going to overshadow the ego, which is
Right. And
all we know.
we've been conditioned to play small our whole lives. Don't be powerful, because you're going to hurt someone else's feelings. If you show up big and strong, you're going to make this person over there feel smaller, and it's the opposite. When we stand in our power, we give permission to others to do the same.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's really the opposite of what the ego has been conditioning us to believe, which is, of course, the ego's job, right? It's the ego's job to make us powerless so that we don't stand in our power. So, all right, there was some good conversation today. Thank you, everyone. Got a little
thanks,
heated for a
everybody.
few minutes, but just the ego blaring its little head, reminding us that it's still present. So gives us more work to do. But it's great to have everyone here today. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.
I'm well aware that other people see things differently than I do. And I said so. It's perfectly fine with me that people see things completely different from me. I don't care if I'm disliked about it, because it doesn't matter to me that I'm disliked. What matters to me is that the point of it is that I'm aware that I can disagree with people, and I can do it peacefully and calmly. And when I disagree with people, and when it seems to turn into that I'm making accusations about them, that isn't really true. And I just want you to know that. But you
Well,
can dislike
I want
people
you to know it
because-
doesn't turn into dislike. It's just you agree to disagree based on differences in the way you see it. There's no offense taken whatsoever. It's just my experience was completely different than what you were saying. So that's it. And that's
my
all.
experience of you is completely different than you think it is.
And that's fine. That's
Yes, it is.
the way of it. That's the way of it.
Yes, it is. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
I'll try
Yeah.
to speak about my experience more so next time. Thank you.
Thanks,
Spread the
everyone.
love.
Have a great week and I'll see you next week.
Did you happy birthday, by the way?
Oh, thank you.
Did you do
Oh,
something
happy
fun?
birthday.
I relaxed and did not much of anything. I
That's
went to a
perfect.
wonderful women's conference at the beach yesterday, or day before yesterday, where we had yoga and sound baths and breakout sessions and yurts. And it was a really fun full day beach sunny experience. So yesterday I just wanted
Did you
to just.
Did you
relax.
stay overnight in a yurt, like a teepee?
No, it was 30 minutes from my house. So
Oh,
see all the
nice.
fun things you have to look forward to, Cynthia.
Wonderful. Yeah, looking forward to that one
Nice.
day.
All right, guys, have a great week. Thank you again.
Thank you so
Wonderful
much.
Bye-bye,
Conversation.
everyone.
And I'll see
Bye-bye.
you next
Thank
week.
you.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.